Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Tom Wells here. Today is Friday, June the 22nd, 2018. 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy for this beautiful Friday. And when I say beautiful Friday, I mean it is beautiful. I had to go out early this morning, Tom, to get some milk and stuff. We were out of a few things, and I mean, the weather was just, oh, God, this is great. I love it.
Wow.
It is so, it's blue skies. It's currently temps in the 60s. It's going to get into the 70s. Probably reach the 80s later on, but most of the day here it's going to be just gorgeous. Like,
that's
I
perfect.
love this.
Yeah.
Love this kind of weather.
Yeah, we've got that too.
Do you?
Although we did have a huge hailstorm, and my car got dented from
Ouch.
that. Well, it got about at least 30,000 cars. I mean, there's no the body shops here can't even handle anything for several years.
Wow.
They're so backed up with hailstorms. The hail was as big as apricots. It was
Wow.
huge.
Holy cow.
People's windows are busted out, just thousands and thousands of people's windows, and their whole cars are just look like somebody went at their car with a baseball bat. That's pretty wild.
I just had a really weird thought. I won't even go there. But when you said that going after with a baseball bat, I just had these strange thoughts go through my head. I'll just leave it there.
Okay. Well, don't go there, Walt.
We don't go there now. Well, that's tied into the topic. I mean, the topic you came up with is taking a break from conditions that are dogging us. And in fact, Louise and I were kind of talking about that indirectly this morning before I even looked at what you'd sent me. Talking about how important it is to get into alignment. And I was even commenting to her, it just blows me away. Every single podcast I do with each of you 5 co-hosts, it always comes down to the same thing. Get into alignment first. Get into alignment first. Get into alignment first. Yeah. Get happy first. Get happy first. Get happy first.
Right.
And there's just like another example of it. I mean, we were talking in terms of, in the context of what goes on with her gardening business. And but the business is still doing well, very, very well. I mean, every business has its own trials and tribulations, and where ours are concerned, we're not doing enough to, as a company, to get into alignment. Most people don't even know to do that. I'm glad that I know about it. I'm glad that I've learned it, from you guys and from what we talk about and so forth, so I can explain to them and say, hey, we got to do this. And I was talking to Louise about that this morning. She says, yeah, you're right. We really need to do that. So, I mean, we're on the same page about it. But it's just amazing because it's especially important when you're dealing with something that's unpleasant. That's the thing that I'm really, really learning. I mean, Abraham has talked about that a lot, but boy, oh boy, what a difference it makes when you're faced with something that is just making your stomach churn, and you stop and you get into alignment, and it just irons out.
Yeah.
You never know exactly how, but it just irons out. Every time almost. I mean, there are times where it doesn't iron out right away, but usually the results are quick.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, because I sometimes my clients, they get in a place where they feel so depressed that they just don't know how to get out of that place. And I've been there myself. Where you just feel it's almost like this dark clouds hanging over you, and you can't get out from underneath it. And no matter what room you go into and what you try to do, there's nothing you can read. There's nothing you can listen to that seems to break the spell, you know? And you don't, I think that's so funny because you don't realize at that time that you're doing it to yourself and how you're doing it. How am I doing that to myself? But that's sort of what it takes. Don't you think? I mean, you get to the place where you take enough steps back somehow that you can see or just feel that somehow I could change this. There's got to be a way. And I don't know, ask people to really trust that there is a power that is greater than their own negativity, than their own mind's dark clouds, they can somehow trust it, and it will bring them to the light.
And to make it even more difficult to believe, that power is actually them. It's in themselves.
Well, but see, people tend to then even beat themselves up more. If it's up to me and I can't do it, then I'm even more screwed up than I thought.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, sure.
I'm stuck in an endless loop because I can't get myself out of my own depression, and neither can anybody else, and neither can anything else. And it's like, when you're feeling that way, it's like it's tunnel vision, but it's what do you do about it? And so, a lot of my work and with these with people that are that depressed is, you just keep working with them until they can see something, that'll give them some relief.
Right.
And then follow that thread, and it'll lead you out of the woods, and you'll start seeing the light and the sun, but it doesn't necessarily happen that easily. And then a lot of I've had clients, and then they go back in it, so each week they're back in that place again until, after a number of weeks, they start to really see how they're doing it to themselves. And they start to realize that this is something that I actually have control over, that I can do something about this. And boy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big thing. I mean, I also can add another aspect to this, which is from the beginning when I was first trying to learn to do this stuff. At first, I was kind of like your very depressed person that you were describing, where nothing made any difference. You just couldn't get happier no matter what you did. I felt like I couldn't even move the needle an inch, just not possible, And then eventually I would get to the point where I could move it and surprise myself. But then I got into the range that was the most frustrating, because there were times when I felt like I could move the needle, and there were other times where I felt like I couldn't. And at first, there were a lot more of the couldn'ts than there were of the coulds, which was really frustrating, because it's that talk about beating yourself up. I was beating myself up like crazy because, there's no way to do this. I can't do this. And I'm just going to be stuck here. I know I'm supposed to get happier, but I can't get happier. What are you supposed to do when you can't get happier? And you just turn into this really negative cycle really quickly by going down that road. But you don't know how to reverse it. You don't know, okay, well, what do I do differently? I don't know what to do differently. That's what it feels like when you're in that place.
Yeah. So what did you do? How did you get beyond that?
Well, one of the topics that Joel and I focused on this week was resilience and persistence. And Wendy and I have talked a lot about resilience too, and persistence. And she talks about a lot in terms of, the stories from her own life that she shared, where against all odds, she just decided she was going to persist through anyway. Somebody would say to her, well, you can't do that. And her response would be, watch me. Even though she had no clue how she was going to do it, she would just persist. She just like, okay, well, somehow I'm going to do this. And then she'd keep going.
Is that about depression or about just something?
Any of it. Whether it's about an internal operation, or it's about trying to attract something into your life, or trying to make something happen, or whatever. She just persisted like crazy. And the resilient one is the one who just keeps getting up. They keep knocking you down, and you keep getting up. That's the resilience thing. Well, that's pretty much what I did. I didn't know what else to do. So I just said, well, I'll just keep trying. And failing and trying and failing and trying and failing. But occasionally I'll succeed. And maybe if I succeed often enough, maybe I'll figure out how to do this thing consistently.
Yeah. And that's how you accomplish it?
That, pretty much, yeah. I mean, it took years to do it, but that's pretty much what I did, yeah.
Well, all on your own, or with the help of a therapist, or how?
Well, a lot of it was with doing the podcast with people like you.
Oh, okay.
Because... I mean, it's with talking with my wife, because Louise and I talk about this stuff all the time. It was talking with anybody I could think of to talk with, but mostly it was all in my own head. It was having the conversations with myself, and I would go through long periods where I would make no progress at all, just no progress, and then it would become too uncomfortable. Too many things would go wrong, and I'd say, well, God, I got to do something. And then I'd have some progress one day. Oh, wow, breakthrough. Something important happened. And then I'd fall back into the old pattern. But you do that long enough, I don't know exactly what happens. But if you're just resilient, you just keep getting up even though you keep getting knocked down, eventually, I don't know, maybe you reach a point where you just decide, I'm going to focus better this time. Or, it's like the adversity and the struggles that you run into somehow helps sharpen your attention.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I do, because I've experienced that myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is probably the reason why you get so many stories of people who really hit bottom and then soar after that. Because when you hit a really bad bottom where there's no way out, and you just feel like you're being defeated by life, if you don't kill yourself, which happens. People do that. But if you don't kill yourself and you just decide to climb out anyway, the degree of focus you get from all that pain and struggle and even suffering that you put yourself through can often be enough to say, you know what, I am really going to focus on this now. And all of a sudden you got this laser focus because you're just so determined to get away from that damn pain.
Yes. Yeah, something in your head, something in my head changes in the way that I'm willing to look at the situation, or I find so many little ways that I can support myself. Like one thing I did when I was going through that for a number of years, when I would print out a quote of Abraham that really hit me, that just that day, just said exactly what I wanted to hear. So then I printed out in big letters, and I would put it, where I could see it in the house several times, a number of times during the day. That was just one thing I would do. Of course, I would listen to Abraham. That really helped a lot. I'd go find particular segments, or I'd listen to 3 hours of it or something,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just doing thing after thing after thing that helped me. Go sit out in nature. I mean, you said you created those songs, that you could put on those songs and
my playlist, right?
Playlist of positive songs and go for a walk. And so, can you think of other things that you did in particular that started to really get you out of those moods?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've talked about I think pretty much all of them here on the podcast. And it's actually tied to something that was one of my earliest questions. Right after I learned about The Secret and saw the movie and read the book, and before I'd really gotten into Abraham, one of the questions I asked myself was, what difference does a vision board make? I mean, what's the point of an affirmation? What is it that an affirmation is going to do for me? I don't get it. Uh-huh. What's the tie-in? And it was the main reason I asked the question was I recognized that while there were people that each of these different modalities worked for, there were a lot of other people they didn't work for. And I'm thinking, well, why don't they work? There's, maybe this is a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Maybe it's just a bunch of woo-woo. Maybe it's a bunch of nonsense. Mm-hmm. But it did work for some people. That's what kept me on my quest. And what I understand now is it doesn't matter what the modality is. I mean, it could be acupuncture. It could be, going to a holistic physician of some kind. It could be doing meditation. It could be working with a shaman. It could be, doing a vision board. It can be doing affirmations. It could be doing the things that Louise and I do, 3 positive, 3 things that happened today that were great. Any of these things. It can be walking down the street and every person you see you smile at. If they come close to you, you say hello. I mean, any of these modalities, the reason that they work is because we try them and we believe them.
Right.
It's the belief that drives them. And when we believe in them, they become like I don't want to say a crutch, more like a walking stick to help us get up to speed to where we want to be. That's what they're for. They're there to help us learn to focus on what it is we really want to focus on. Because that's really what we're struggling with. We don't know it at first, but we're struggling with our focus.
That's right. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And belief and desire. Those are the two that Abraham always talks about.
Yeah, that's right.
Get you near enough to your vortex that the vortex will then pull you in. And that's the interesting thing is that, we wonder why the air finally clears from the storm that's in our head and in our body, and all these feelings that it feels so overwhelmingly depressed or overwhelmingly hopeless or despairing. And I think it's because we get enough belief and enough desire that finally that love of life, that beauty of life, that power of life just pulls us in that direction, and the air starts to clear. And then we can begin to add other things, and just, it becomes, my life has been like sometimes for years, just a project. I'm my own project.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Getting myself happy, what's it going to take? I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, just when I think I'm on a roll to create what I want to create in my life, so many times I would get sucked back into my own mental patterns of sabotage, of feeling overwhelmed, of feeling, like my problems are too big for me to accomplish this thing I want to accomplish. And I didn't feel, most of my life, I haven't felt that. But in the last 8 years since my divorce, those kind of things have happened a whole lot more. And so that's what drove me so much to Abraham and becoming a coach, was because I knew that, I think, and just like they say, everybody who's a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist are usually the people that have the biggest, things that they've had to work on.
Of course,
on.
Yeah, that's why they became psychiatrists and psychotherapists.
Right. That's why I became a coach, and a lot because I've gone through so much with my own self that I've had to just learn over and over, like you did, over and over and over again. How do I realign myself? How do I get away from these conditions that are so difficult for me and get into a place of feeling good? And it's the thing of going general. How can you teach a person? I mean, this is my big question today because of the particular client I'm working with right now. How can I teach this person to be more, to get aligned, but to give themselves a break from their own feeling that they're their own worst enemy, that they can't get beyond their own sabotage of their own life, and the overwhelming sadness that brings, and it's like, wow, and because I've been there, but
I think we all have.
Telling another person, well, did you try this? Did you try that? And yeah. So it's
when you wrote your description today, when you wrote your description I thought was really good for today's show, because you entitled it "Taking a Break from Conditions That Are Dogging Us," and your description said, when we are in situations where things are showing up that we don't like, and we wrestle with the conditions that are bothering us, trying to find ways to make it all smooth out, sometimes we just need to get away from those conditions for a while. Sometimes we need to give ourselves a chance to just feel good without those conditions staring us in the face. And then maybe we can start to get happier, clearer, more relaxed, and more aligned with what really feels good to us, and let what's in our vortex flow more easily to us. And what you're describing there is like a very early step for getting back into alignment when you don't know how to get back into alignment. You walk away from it for a bit. You just move away from it physically, mentally, in every way possible.
This is what I just...
Yes, when you do that, you're also risking taking yourself with you, because it's not like, the problems are outside of you. The problem is actually inside. So you're continuing to take yourself with you. But at least you're getting away from the thing that you're sensitized to. And if while you're away from that sensitized thing, then you can actually get yourself into a happier place. Well, then you can deal with the sensitized thing and make it desensitized, because you're in a happier place.
Right. And then also receive impulses from source about what is your direction, about this thing that you are so conditionally affected by. Right. See, this podcast came because I've been having some difficulties in the relationship I'm in, and I felt that I needed to step away a little bit because I was producing so much intensity being up and close with her that I felt I need to step back and feel again what it's like just to be in my space. And of course, when I did that, I also realized that I was neglecting a lot of things that I had been focused on in my own personal world that were sort of like not getting taken care of, about career development and things like that. And so when I stepped away, and even just giving up too much of my own sense of my own space, that I've got they say in relationships, the biggest difficulty or the biggest opportunity is how you balance intimacy and with autonomy. So how much up close and personal time do you spend with that person, and how much time do you still take for yourself? And realizing that you're keeping your own autonomy and your own sovereignty, who you are as a unique being and in your own way that you perceive yourself, keeping that intact, and then bringing that very intact, aligned person back into the intimate connection with that other person, so that you don't feel like you're losing yourself in that relationship. You're losing your sense of your own autonomy and sovereignty. It's so interesting how we do that. And so I'm just finding that it's a dance, and one part of me wants to say to this woman that I can't make this happen, and the other part wants to say, give me a chance, maybe I can make this happen,
Sure.
because I don't really know what all is driving me away, or why it's so difficult when it's too much intimacy, because intimacy can be totally delicious and wonderful.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, but then it can also be like, this is too much, and I can't keep this level of focus. It's too much for me to keep, and I'm losing myself here in this way and this way and this way, and I'm finding this resistance and that resistance. And sometimes the very resistances to the relationship, are because that part of me is saying you're losing yourself, you're losing your alignment. Basically, you're losing your alignment. And it's funny, because now that I'm away for the last week and spending more time by myself, I'm starting to come back into that sense of happiness and ease and love, of just being me, doing the things I like to do, reading the things I like to read, and working on putting my energy back into my career projects and things. And I feel like this is what I have to be. I've got to remain a healthy person. And sometimes I say, even if I don't have a relationship, I've got to stay a healthy, happy being. And then I'm able to maybe be in a relationship.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different forms this can take too. I mean, the way that you just outlined it is a good description of what's going on with your particular situation. But yes, there are things that we carry. We set up limitations with our wants sometimes, which is really interesting to me. And those limitations that we place actually work against what we're trying to accomplish with relationships. I'll give you an example. There was somebody I saw today on Facebook. You see this a lot on Facebook, particularly in the law of attraction groups, where somebody was complaining that there's somebody that she's in love with and she wants to marry, but they're not currently on speaking terms. And then she goes into the whole thing. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, hold on. You're in love with him, you want to marry him, but you're not on speaking terms, and that doesn't give you pause? Wait a minute. Stop the show here. Hold on a moment. But she doesn't see it that way. She doesn't see herself as putting a limiting belief in her own path. She sees it as a perfectly normal, natural thing to want, and there's just this little bump in the road that needs to be ironed out. Now, on the one hand, that is an example of persistence and resilience. She's going to get up anyway. On the other hand, it raises the question in my mind, how much does she really love him? Or for that matter, how much does he really love her if they aren't on speaking terms?
Yeah, I can see that. But I also can see how it's sort of like if you're in a marriage already, in a tight relationship, and you've got to get sometimes yourself back aligned. Well, sometimes you don't talk to your partner for a little bit, or you go out for a long walk, or some people, I think, sometimes literally go, live in a different place for a while, and then they come back together and they're able to renegotiate their relationship.
Which is kind of tied to what you're talking about, walking away from it, moving away from it just to desensitize for a bit.
Well, that's kind of what I'm doing, but I'm also very aware that if I continually have my buttons are getting pushed continually in this relationship by me, obviously, but it's a sign to me that, is this the right relationship? Because that Abraham talks about, the thing that's in your vortex is the most wonderful, 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 wonderful relationship you can imagine. Now, I don't expect a perfect relationship, but I certainly feel like the thing that I'm longing for is a relationship that flows very easily, where I don't run into a little obstacle here, a little obstacle there, a little obstacle here, a little obstacle there. Now, psychologically, by that paradigm of psychotherapy, you could say, well, you're just, dealing with stuff that you haven't worked on inside yourself. And if you cleaned up your relationship to your mother, you would be able to then be in a healthy relationship with a woman, because you wouldn't be continually reacting to her as if she was, because she's pushing the buttons that your mother always pushed with you, those conditions you created. Then there's the way that it seems that Abraham is saying it. The law of attraction says, it could also be that, really that what you're doing is you're fine tuning yourself to what you really want. And what you really want is conditions that you flow with easily, and that those conditions are there. I mean, we don't want to be conditional though. We want to be unconditional, but we are conditional beings. So it's kind of like this dance, this balance of, well, is it this person I need to get away from? Or is it something in me that is simply resistant to my own ease and flow with life? And that's the dilemma that I'm in right now. It's like which is it? Do I need to work on my past relationship and go into 20 sessions of psychotherapy, or do I need to seriously, I mean, or do I need to just go, get into this alignment with myself and continue to follow what feels good, what feels good, what feels good, what feels good. And if I get together with this person and it just continues to not feel good a bunch of the time, then maybe it's just not the right relationship. So,
the one thing that I keep thinking about as you're saying all that, and I'm not you, so I'm not trying to suggest that you should be like me or that I should try to be like you, because we're different. Everybody is different. We have different perspectives. We have different needs, different wants, and that's a good thing. But you talked about unconditional love versus conditional, and I'm thinking about my relationship with Louise, and I've always loved her unconditionally. But by the same token, that doesn't mean that I've always liked everything she had to say. Right. The difference is, in my mind, I can still love her unconditionally and just disagree. Like, no, thank you. I don't want what you're saying. I don't have to get wrapped up about it. I don't have to get all worked up and like, oh my God, and then now we're going to start having a screaming match, and then we're going to have a fight. We're not going to talk for 3 days. I don't need to go through that, and she doesn't either. But for us anyway, we're willing to love each other, and we're willing to respect the differences. And there's really not a conflict in our minds about that. I mean, from our perspective, I can say this very confidently, certainly about me, and I'm like 99.99% sure this is true of her too. We just don't let that stuff interfere with the question of whether or not we unconditionally love each other. We just don't. It's just not part of that. They're really separate things in our minds. They're not part of the same package. So just because there are times when I say no, and just because there are times that she says no, doesn't mean we're putting conditions on our love. It's just, no, that's not what I want. That's all. It doesn't mean I love you any less. It's just, that's just not what I want.
And are there some times where you're physically attracted to her more, or other times where you just don't want to be attracted to her because you just don't feel it?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's always waxing and waning.
Okay.
But again, that has nothing to do, in my mind, with whether I'm in love with her. And by in love, I don't mean chemically in love. I mean, I love her for who she is, independently of sex, independently of what we do in our lives, independently of when we're spending time together and when we're not spending time together. I just love who she is. I mean, from where I'm sitting, I like her. I just like who she is. And it was one of the things that she liked most about me, that I didn't try to change her. I had no interest in trying to change. I wanted her to be who she was. I was willing to appreciate who she was. And that was a new experience for her. I mean, the way she expressed it early on was, he gets my jokes. Well, her jokes, I'm not sure if I can categorize them, but they tended to be on the silly side. And they tended to be what some people might call even childish. I don't see them that way, but some people would say that. And so she was used to getting put down for her sense of humor. I didn't put her down. Why? I appreciated her for who she was. That was a new experience for her with men. So that was really big. That was a big reason why we got together and why we've stayed together. And similarly, I mean, there are all kinds of ways that she shows respect and appreciation for who I am without trying to change me. Doesn't mean she always agrees with me. She doesn't. Doesn't mean I always agree with her. I don't. It just means we don't want to try to. We're not insisting that the other person be who we want them to be. We just let them be who they are, and we like that person. We love that person. We both love who that other person is as they are, with all their foibles and with all of my failures, with all my little things, my idiosyncrasies. She just loves me who I am. That's it.
So somehow, in that finding each other, you guys kind of saw that early on, and that was one of the main
I think we actually brought it. I think it comes before the relationship.
Uh-huh.
I don't think it's something that happens because of a relationship. I think you both bring it to the relationship. You both come in with the attitude that when I find somebody who I like, I find attractive, who I find interesting, I just have no interest in changing them. That it's a prerequisite, I think, of a successful relationship.
Yeah.
Whereas most people, well, maybe not most, a large number of people go into a relationship, see somebody who isn't quite the way they want it to be, and then either consciously or subconsciously try to figure out how to change them into what they want them to be.
Yeah.
And that's always a losing strategy.
Sure. Sure. And that's one of the main things that comes up for me is, like, do I want to accept this thing the way it is? Is it okay with me, or is it going to continually haunt me? And that's what I feel like I'm up against in the relationship I'm in, because there are several things that just seem like, they're difficult for me to be in the presence of, and then, wanting to have those things be different, and then feeling like, either I'm going just to have them be okay, or maybe this isn't the best relationship for me. And that weighed against all the good, amazing, positive things, like, so it's just whether or not those little things are going to continue to push me to not be content, to be bothered by those little things.
Well,
And
and I think you've clearly outlined what really goes on, because you said, "Well, I know this is all inside of me," and you're right; it is all inside of you. It's not.
mm-hmm.
It's not an external thing. I mean, we express it as if it were an external thing that's happening to you, but it's not. It's something that you're doing inside yourself, and you know that.
Yep.
And that's ultimately the strength. Because once you understand that, then you know it really doesn't have anything to do with the other person.
Yeah.
It really just has to do with you.
Then the question is, should I work on those things in psychotherapy, or should I just start looking for a different person?
Well, the third option is, can you work on those things yourself without psychotherapy? Not that psychotherapy is bad.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure,
but that's the third
too.
option. Can you actually work on them? You could work on them with a therapist. You could work on them without a therapist. You could work on them with like another life coach. I mean, therapists all have other therapists that they see.
Right. Right.
They usually call it supervision, but that's really what it amounts to. They're basically getting therapy from their supervisors. Mm-hmm. And life coaches can certainly need the same kind of thing. You're a life coach and you're really good at it, but that doesn't mean you don't need help from another life coach. So maybe that's the way to do it.
I have worked with life coaches.
Yeah, so that might be another way to do it. I think there are a lot of ways to go about doing it. What really matters is what one appeals to you. What one resonates the most with you. That's the one I'd start with if I were you.
You mean which course of action?
Yeah.
Resonates?
Yeah, which choice, which option, which path?
Yeah. No, I know, and that's being able to listen to that is really keen. And I do that. I mean, I actually do day by day and almost, hour by hour. I'm listening.
I know that one too.
I'm listening to what, my inner guidance is telling me. And I even, took a whole course in channeling. And so I ask the questions to the unseen realm, to my ancestors, to my higher self, to all that is, to however you want to conceive of whatever you pray to in the other realm, whatever. And I let them, to try to receive always, like, what is the best course of action? What is it I really want here? What really feels the best to me? And of course, that's a kind of cool thing always, is that there is the sense of what feels better. And I tell clients a lot, and, have to remind myself a lot, if it feels good, it's probably your path of least resistance.
That's
if
right.
It feels bad, it's probably your path of most resistance. So, that's a huge key to me. And I find myself always getting into this discussion with clients, is this your path of least resistance? And you think of something growing, how like a tree will literally grow around a rock, in order to get to the sun. And that's following its path of least resistance. Or water, when it's coming down the mountain, if it encounters a great big boulder, it doesn't try to go through the boulder. It goes around the boulder.
Right.
And talking with psychologists, some of my psychologist friends, they say you've got to go through the thing. You've got to go through the thing that feels so difficult for you, that feels so painful for you. You've got to face it and go right through it. And I say, but that's not what a river does. That's not what water does. That's not what a seedling does when it's coming up. It goes, but in a way, maybe it does. I mean, the seedling goes right through the asphalt, and it comes right up through the asphalt. So there is, I guess life does both. It goes through it and it goes around it. But I guess we have to feel like what is the path that maybe, I guess sometimes going through it is its path of least resistance. Like if a seed is underneath asphalt, you've seen these pictures so many times and seen it in real life where grass or something will come right up through asphalt. And,
oh yeah.
But it surely, even in doing that, it's following its path of least resistance, because it's following the crack in the asphalt that can actually get it to the sun, and then it finally makes it. But it's probably an amazing journey that gets it there. Or like a butterfly, when it's emerging from its cocoon, if it doesn't struggle and go through the difficulty of breaking out of that shell, it can't survive. There have been people that have tried to open the chrysalis for the butterfly so that it doesn't struggle so much, and then the butterfly never can fly.
Right.
Maybe that's true of a chicken and anything that, maybe it's even true of us when we're born. We've got to go through the birth canal, and it's maybe not always easy.
But it does seem to be where focus increases. When we're in the midst of struggle, that's where our focus gets best. And that may be what the connection is right there. The fact that we're able to focus better on what it is we're wanting to focus on. Whatever it is.
Yeah. And so in this relationship thing, I feel like I'm constantly asking myself, what's my path of least resistance and most allowing, like what, and then you think about, well, what am I allowing? I'm allowing myself to feel good. That's what it comes down to so much of the time. And it seems like a lot of psychologists say, it's not about you feeling good. It's about you facing your greatest fears, your greatest, the things where you have the most resistance. You've got to go directly into that stuff. And, I know that in learning to do shiatsu massage, which I do on people, and having a lot of deep tissue body work done on myself, if I want to break up where the resistance is in my muscles, the therapist, the body worker, and I used to do it myself on people, and I do actually do it on myself. You go into where it hurts so much with your thumb, and you push, and as you push, you can feel where the pain is, and you kind of follow it, and you sort of take as much pain as you can take as you press in very slowly, and then you release, and then you go back in again. You find where that pain has moved to now, and you push really hard and as much pain as you can take, and then you let go, and then you do it one more time. Well, I've done that hundreds of times on my body and had it done by a body worker that's a really good body worker, and we've relieved so much pain in my body over periods of 10 years, that it's amazing. So that's an example of, you go into the pain and it will dissolve.
I have to tell you that it creates a very funny image in my head. And I understand totally what you're saying, and this is really just taking it to the extreme, so you kind of take it with a grain of salt. But it reminds me of the story of the guy who was standing outside on the sidewalk with a 2x4, hitting himself on the head with it over and over again. And finally, a passerby stopped after watching him for a few moments and says, "Why do you do that?" And the guy says, "Well, because it feels so good when I stop."
Yeah. Well, there's that too. There's that too. Yeah. Right.
Oh, geez.
But I really do. I guess wonder. I'm glad that this discussion is happening, because it makes me think about, do I go into something that it seems so difficult and go deeper into, well, what's the pain about that's associated with that? Or do I simply turn away from the pain, withdraw myself from the conditions of the difficulty, and put myself into a better feeling situation, and assume that if I follow if I follow feeling good, feeling good, feeling good, feeling good, I'll just end up feeling good. And if I follow feeling bad, I'll end up feeling bad. And it's sort of like, that's a very black or white answer, but seems to be the answer that that Abraham gives a lot.
Well, actually, what Abraham says is they don't really say feel good. They say feel better.
Yeah.
They say reach for a higher place than where you are right now.
Right.
And then try to stabilize at that higher place. So it doesn't have to necessarily be good, like, oh, wow, I'm so happy and everything is great. It can just be better than where you were at before. Even if you're still in the negative end of the scale, if you're higher up on the negative end, you're better. You've improved. And in fact, once you get to that improved place, if you can stabilize there, you can just then go for an even higher place. You can climb the ladder, so to speak. But I think they emphasize better rather than good. I think better seems to be more like what they're trying to say.
Okay. But sometimes the path of least resistance, like, for example, let's say you want a career doing public speaking. Say you're going to be a radio talk show host, or you're going to be on the television or something, but you don't have, like you have a huge fear of public speaking, or you get really nervous when you're in front of the camera, and so you've got to go through the preparation to get yourself to where you can be in front of the camera, and it can be a flow. It can be easy. And so many people have gone through their resistances to something, and that's how they've achieved great things in their life and finally overcome great difficulties, and then open the doors to all kinds of possibilities because they went through the initial resistance that they had to it.
When you say go through, what do you mean? Be more specific. What does going through the resistance mean?
Okay, here, for example, if I want to be a good public speaker, I've had to literally sit in my living room and practice a speech 15 times in order to then go and deliver it with great ease and fluidity. And then I find out what it means to be a good public speaker. So, but the price I had to pay was being willing to face the fears I have of being rejected by my audience, or blowing it in front of my audience by making a fool of myself. But the way that I overcome it is by doing this difficult practice of writing the speech, first of all, which is not that easy. Then, first pick the topic, then write the speech, then memorize it to the point that when I'm up there, it's so smooth that it doesn't even look memorized. It just looks like I'm being spontaneous. And I can do that now. But you see, I run into people, for example, clients and even myself and other people I've known, who we don't often want to make the effort to go through a difficult time in order to get to something that we want.
It reminds me of something. It reminds me of when I took music lessons. I took piano lessons for, I don't know, half a dozen years or so, and then I took guitar lessons after that. And I learned after a number of years that there were two different ways to practice. One way to practice was the one that made you get better. The other one didn't. The one that made you get better was where you would practice by playing something and it sounded terrible, and then you'd say, okay, where can I iron it out? And you would work on ironing just that one piece out, and then that one piece out, and then this one piece out, until you're finally, like you were doing with your speech, right? You're practicing in advance, smoothing it out, until finally, when you go to actually deliver the talk, it comes out like it's great, and it was effortless. Yeah. Well, that's the good way to practice. There's another way to practice that people often do when they're taking lessons, and it's usually the reason why they give up on taking music lessons, although they don't really realize it. And that is, they keep practicing their mistakes over and over again. They keep playing it the same way with the same mistakes over and over again. They keep stumbling the same way over and over again, and they keep repeating that pattern, thinking that if they just keep doing it over and over again, somehow they will stop doing it. But the simple fact is that doesn't work. You actively have to, while you're doing your practicing, try pieces of it differently. Try to make your fingers do it differently so you don't make the same mistakes, make fewer mistakes, maybe even make no mistakes.
Yes.
That's practicing to your benefit, whereas the other one is practicing to your detriment. You're actually practicing to make yourself more and more miserable.
And one thing that you just reminded me is that I remember that when I practice for these number of speeches I've given, I also tell myself, if this isn't fun, I'm not going to do it.
Good
so
point.
That's, I think, a really amazing attitude that I'm finding that more and more people are asking themselves about whatever they're choosing to do, whether it's their career or their relationship or anything. It's like, even if you're going to clean your house, you could say, if this isn't fun, if I can't make this fun, I don't want to do it. Of course,
it's a great point. It's a great point, because when I did practicing the right way, I was usually pretty good at doing it the right way. When I did it the right way, part of the fun was taking a piece of it that I was making mistakes on, and just playing that one piece, one part really slowly until I got it right. And then I got this little jolt of excitement, like, I got it right. I didn't make any mistakes. I wonder if I can do it, maybe not up to speed, but maybe a little bit faster. And I do it again. Yeah, I did it again. And that was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I did when practicing the speeches. I would always, look for, well, first of all, is this fun? And then how can I make it fun? And then when it was, when I was noticing that, well, I still went a minute over, so what can I cut out now and still have it be fun? How can I say it in a different way? How can I notice the part where I'm going off into too much detail and cut that back in a way that feels good? And then I would sometimes come up with something more interesting to say, or more funny to say, or because it's all about attitude. And I've noticed that in my relationship, I can approach that relationship, going to see my friend from a point of incredible lightheartedness, or sometimes expecting it to be difficult, and certain things to be hard and certain things to be confronting to me, and then they invariably will be. if I have the attitude that excuse me, that this thing is difficult, this thing is where I get backed up, and yet there's a point at which I have to say, is this overall fun for me? Is this whole thing feeling like fun, or is it feeling like a chore, or sometimes feeling like this is not flowing for me? I'm not following a path of least resistance. I'm trying too hard here. And,
yeah, sure. I understand exactly what you mean. And in fact, that's part of it, isn't it? It's part of trying to get a sense of how much you're enjoying it and what you're enjoying.
Yeah. Creating this new career I'm creating, or this new group coaching program, it has so many parts to it, because you've got to create, all this online stuff, and your automated email follow-up systems, and your marketing campaign, and they all have all this tech parts to them that I don't really know that much about, and so part of me says, oh, this is just too much. This is not, how could this ever be fun? But the other part of me says, well, if I take it a step at a time, and I ask myself every step, is this fun? Is this fun? Is this fun? Then I can finesse it. I can dance with it. And that's what it really comes down to so much for me. Is it's sort of like I love right now in my life, because of the work with Abraham and Law of Attraction, to always be asking myself, is this fun? Am I dancing? Is this fun? Am I playing with this? Or, the second I start feeling like it's a chore, to create this business, to create this new program, then I use that as just my key, that I've got to back off again and look for, where's my path of least resistance? Where is this fun?
It's interesting. As we're talking about this, I keep going back to those music lessons I took, and I'm remembering, I'm actually getting myself back in that place doing this. And I remember, there were, especially early on, there were times where there were, parts of a song, parts of a piece that I just couldn't do. Every time I played it, it came out wrong. And I'd get really frustrated. And to the point of tears, and then I'd try to do it again, and I'd fail in the same spot. And I can't do this. That was the feeling. Right. I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. I can't do this.
Right. Right.
And then there were times where I'd have the breakthrough, right? Where I would do the practice the way I described that you should do it, where you break it down to little pieces. In fact, my first teacher explained this process to me. It's one of the reasons I loved her so much, because she was so good at breaking things down like that. But I would go after like one measure. If you know music at all, a measure is like in 4/4 time, it's like four notes. There's not a whole lot to it, and I just try to can I do those four notes perfectly, and then if I could, then I do 8 notes, and then I do 16 notes. Yeah. How many measures in a row can I do before I fail? Okay, I can do 5 in a row before I fail. I can do 6 in a row. And then each time that I reached a new milestone, it was like, whoa, I got to a new milestone. Now, instead of feeling so frustrated because I can't do it, now I'm doing it. Now, does it sound like the song yet? No, I'm playing it. Duh, 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 duh. I'm playing it really, really slowly. It doesn't sound anything like a song yet. But at least I'm doing it. And I think that's part of what happens when you're persistent, when you're resilient. You just get up and try again, and you just find some way to succeed with it, and know that once you found that way to succeed, you give yourself that little jolt of satisfaction that enables you to go on another step, one more try, one more measure, until finally you do it often enough where your playing starts to smooth out, and people say, "Wow, you're really good," and I say, "I am." Really? You don't notice that you got to being good. All you know is one step at a time. You ironed out one little thing here, and one little thing here, and one little thing here, until finally it got to the point where it sounded like something. And you say, "Oh, damn! How did I do that?"
That's great. I think that's what I do. I mean, that's what my clients do a lot. That's what our work is one, adding one technique at a time of how to practice law of attraction. Like it's the people we learn, like, for example, to live in the moment. Like you start you could realize that if I was more in the moment, I could be more free because I wouldn't be so much concerned about what's happened in the past and what's going to happen in the future, projecting the fears from the past into the future, and therefore staying stuck in a pattern. And but you learn that in the moment I can be completely free if I give myself the freedom to just let go of the past and the future, and just it's like what the Buddhists call mindfulness, just living completely in the moment and observing what is even is better often than being in the worry about what happened in the past and what's going to happen next. But as clients learn one thing after another about ways that they can free themselves from their previous old paradigm way of thinking and acting, that way that kept them stuck and that kept them fearful and that kept them angry and that kept them, in these patterns that didn't work for them and that were destroying their life or making it impossible to achieve something they want to achieve. It's like eventually it's sort of like they get fluid. It's sort of like getting back a muscle that you haven't used for a really long time, or learning to play a musical instrument. You're learning that just to do these things, and then eventually you're finding that it's flowing, and it's flowing more, and it's flowing easier, and before long you realize you're a whole lot happier, and you're starting to achieve the things you wanted to achieve. They're coming from your vortex into your life. The relationships, the money, the career situation that you want is starting to show up because you've freed yourself from the old way of thinking that was blocking you. But you did it one thing at a time. It's like the focus wheel that Abraham teaches.
Right,
you're adding a better way of thinking, or that wouldn't it be nice if you're telling yourself a better feeling thought, a better feeling thought, a better feeling thought. And at first, like you say, it's just better feeling. It might not be the thing you want, but it's better than what you were feeling.
Exactly.
Better than what you were telling yourself yesterday, and you're finding, I still backslide. I still get into a negative place, but now I realize, well, what's something a little better I could do right now?
Yep.
Well, I could quit, talking to my mother so much, who every time I do, I get really upset, and I could just talk to her once a week instead of every day, or different things that we do, that give us a break, from being so overwhelmed by the stuff we pile on our own shoulders. It's often we're just piling it on ourselves.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, that's really what it's all about. It's about developing whatever strategy it takes, and you're describing a really good one, whatever strategy it takes to break the negative pattern and replace it with something that's better.
Yeah.
And then once you've got that going, replace that with something that's better. And then once you've got that going, replace that with something that's better. Just incrementally getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And then amazingly, at some point, you get to be good at it.
Yes, like telling better feeling stories is like that. I remember the day a few years ago when I finally realized that in the middle of the day, I always remember it was like I was walking in the bathroom or something, and I said, I was thinking some negative thought, and I just immediately said, well, I don't want to think that anymore. What's a better feeling thought I could have? You know, I don't want to tell that story anymore. What's a better feeling story I could tell myself? And now I've made that a habit, you know, so that no matter what's coming up in my head, well, not always, but often now I go, what's a different way I could say that and think about that? A different feeling story that would be the story I would rather be experiencing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I even literally have made it on my agenda that I want to sit down with my notebook again. And, you know, at the top of each page, you know, like write relationships at the top of one, write my new business at the top of one, write my money at the top of one, or my health. And then write on that page, what's the story I want to be having happen in that area? You know, how would I like this area to be unfolding for me? What would it look like if I was really having the health that I really want? What would it look like if my money was the way I really want it to be? Where would I be going? How would I be spending my money? How much would I have in the bank? How much would I spend? What would I be buying? You know, what would I be enjoying with that money? Because it's good sometimes to remind myself. I think all that stuff's in my vortex already, but it sort of just brings it more into my awareness from time to time. And all these little things that we do to tell better feeling story and to let what's in our vortex come to us, it sort of becomes like playing a musical instrument. We get better and better at it the more we practice it.
Yeah, that's true. And by the way, there's one more thing I'd like to add to the list there of things we'd like to be good at. I'd like our listeners to be good at just making sure that they're subscribed to the podcast, because it's free and they get all of the episodes for free when they're subscribed. So if you are among those who are on our subscription list, already get all the episodes sent to your phone or whatever. Great. Thank you. We love you guys. We are your best fans. And we're so glad that you're with us. If you're new to the podcast, this is maybe one of the first few episodes you've heard, take a moment. Just go to the homepage of our website, loatoday.net. And you'll see all the instructions there. It takes about a minute. It's really not very long at all. And it pays off such huge dividends because the people who are subscribers, they just tell us over and over again what a difference it makes in their lives. I mean, we received a message today via the website. One of our listeners, somebody we've heard from previously, contacted us, and she was talking about a show that she had heard Wendy and I do last week in which we were talking about The Secret. And it reminded her that she found us because she had watched The Secret and wanted to learn more and found our podcast. And through our podcast, found out about Abraham Hicks and loved that. She was so appreciative of that. Well, there's an example of the kind of thing that people get when they subscribe to the podcast. So please take a moment to subscribe. It's your way of taking that one next better step. So do it.
Okay, I will.
All right, there you go.
Oh, no, I already did.
Oh, yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you did. That's a great thing. But yeah, this has been a good topic. I'm glad you brought it up today. And it's.
Yeah,
I mean,
I always bring up the topic I need.
Well, you're good at that. You're really good at that, and it's always timely, and it's always right on top of what we need to talk about. And I'll just reinforce what I said at the beginning of the podcast today. I continue to be amazed by the fact that it all comes down to one thing. Before we do anything, we need to get into a happier place, happier than where we are right now. And if we do that, everything works out in the end.
Yes.
That's it. That's it in a nutshell. Okay, the podcasts are done. We're over. No need to subscribe. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, if it was all that simple.
Yeah, right. Well, it is. We're just learning how to do it. But Tom, it's been great. Thanks for doing the show, and I look forward to talking to you again on Monday.
Yeah, Monday. Good. Look forward to it.
And very quickly, how does somebody reach out to you if they want some direct attention?
they can go to my website, which is youarejoy, youarejoy.com. And I give a free 1 hour coaching session so you can see whether or not you'd like to work with me. And you can work on any condition that you want to work on.
Excellent. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.